Hello, and welcome to the What If I Fail podcast with me, your host, Alex Coward. Today, I want to talk about one of the hardest parts of being visible right now, and that's knowing what to do when the world is worlding, when it's a lot. Because at the moment, it feels like every time you open your phone, there's something else happening. Another crisis, another headline, another situation that is heavy and complex and honestly really far out of our control. And then layered on top of that, you've actually still got to run your business. You've got your clients, you've got your team, you've got your life. And there's this quiet underlying question. What is my responsibility here? Do I speak out? Do I stay quiet? Do I keep selling? Is it inappropriate to promote my work right now? And if I'm honest, most people aren't struggling with a lack of care. They're struggling with what the right thing to do actually is. And I think there's a tension here that I don't hear spoken about often enough, because on the one side, there is a very real human responsibility to care about what is going on in the world right now, to acknowledge it, to not be completely disconnected from reality, and to recognize that there are people experiencing things that we are not. And I want to say this really clearly. I'm a white, middle-class British woman. For the most part, global crises are not directly impacting my day-to-day safety. And that is a privilege. And ignoring that privilege would be irresponsible of me. But on the other side of things, there's this growing pressure online that says if you're not speaking about it, you're part of the problem. And if you continue with business as usual, you don't care. And this is where it gets really messy, because now we're no longer responding, we're reacting. And I think it's really important to note that not all speaking out is meaningful. Some of it is informed, some of it is thoughtful, some of it is genuinely supportive, and some of it is performative. It's reposting something because everyone else is reposting it. It's saying something quickly so you're not judged for saying nothing. It's trying to prove that you're a good person online. And I think that we need to be really honest, because speaking just to be seen speaking is not the same as taking a stand. And equally, staying silent doesn't automatically mean that you don't care. Sometimes it means I don't know enough to speak on this responsibly. I don't want to add noise to something that needs clarity. I'm still processing what I think, right? And that's not avoidance, that's discernment. I think I'd like to share something personal here. So back in October 2025, I wrote a post that I put up on Facebook saying that I don't tend to speak about political issues or hot topics publicly. Not because I don't care, not because I don't have opinions, but because I choose to have those conversations in private. And at the time, I said something along the lines of, I don't believe using my platform to share my opinions will make a big enough difference to change the way I communicate. I spoke about performative allyship, I spoke about people jumping on bandwagons, and about loud opinions that aren't always informed. And I still stand by a good majority of that. I think performative allyship is a real problem. I think speaking to be seen speaking is a problem. But I would say that my thinking has definitely evolved since then, especially in light of the conversation that I had with G. Sabini Roberts, which is next week's episode, speaking around when to talk up, when to say something, how to be seen as a safe space by showing what you stand for. My thinking around this has really evolved, because what I understand now more deeply is that when you have the privilege to stay quiet, choosing silence all of the time can be part of the problem. Not speaking can, in some cases, be interpreted as not standing. And we do want people to know what we stand for. We do want people to know that they have something in common with us and that we are a space where they can be safe. And I do think that is something we do have a responsibility to be aware of. But, and this is important, that doesn't automatically mean that the answer is say something, say anything, say it quickly. Because the part that I think often gets missed online is that these conversations don't often feel very safe to have in public. When emotions are really high, which they often are around these topics, people aren't always discussing to understand. They're debating to win. They're looking to win the argument. They want the right take, the most acceptable opinion, the least controversial wording. And if you get it wrong, you're picked apart, you're misunderstood. And while in the conversation that I had with G, we talked about sometimes you have to accept that you will be misunderstood and you will be disliked and people won't always agree with you. It's not a space for learning. It doesn't create space for learning or evolving. It creates this pressure. And for a lot of people, that pressure is exactly what stops them engaging at all. So to say this really clearly, I think there is absolutely value in public conversations, but there is also value in private ones. Some of the most important perspective shifts I've had have come from the conversations that I have behind closed doors, understanding people's lived experience, allowing them a space to share exactly how they feel about what's going on without worrying about the message behind it, the messy conversations, the challenging ones, the confronting ones, the ones where I've had to admit that I was wrong, right? And the conversations where I've had to update my thinking. And I think we need to make it more accessible, that growth doesn't have to be performed in real time on the internet. We don't have to perform, we don't have to show all of our working out in public to everyone all of the time. We absolutely have a responsibility to be aware of our privilege, to not default to silence without thinking, but we also have a responsibility to engage in ways that are actually productive. And sometimes that looks like speaking publicly, and sometimes that looks like listening privately. And I think if we're bringing this back to business, and if you're listening to this, you are visible in some way, you have an audience, you have clients, you have people who are looking to you. And that does come with responsibility. But the responsibility is not to speak on everything. It's not to become a news outlet. And it's definitely not to abandon your work every time something difficult is happening in the world. Your responsibility is to lead. And leadership requires discernment, not reaction. And so I'm going to say something that might feel a bit uncomfortable. The world will keep worlding. Things will keep continuing to happen. There will always be something. And if every single time something happens, you stop your business, you spiral, you lose focus, you disconnect from your own life, eventually your business will collapse. And when that does happen, there's no one coming to save you. Not the internet, not the people you stood with in solidarity, not the algorithm. I know it sounds really harsh, but it's true. You have a responsibility to yourself, to your livelihood, to your stability, to your future. And I guess there's a phrase here that comes to mind, isn't there? Charity begins at home. And I think we've lost sight of what that actually means, because it doesn't mean only care about yourself. It means you cannot pour from an empty cup. It means you cannot support others if you yourself are unstable. It means that you cannot lead if you are constantly overwhelmed. And so sometimes the most responsible thing that you can do is to put your blinkers on, is to get your head down, focus on your work, serve your clients, take care of your life, make money, run your business, not because you don't care, but because you're making sure that you are resourced enough to care sustainably. So instead of asking yourself, should I speak or not speak? I think the better question is, what's my role here? Am I informed enough to actually add value to this public conversation? Do I have something meaningful to say? Is this aligned with what I actually stand for? Or is my role right now to continue showing up, creating stability, and supporting the people that are in my world? Because both are really powerful, valid positions, and the power is in choosing intentionally and doing it on purpose. So let me give you a bit of a permission slip here. You are allowed to care deeply without constantly performing that care online. You are allowed to stay informed without consuming content to the point of burnout. You are allowed to continue selling and to continue building and to continue growing your business even when the world feels really heavy. It doesn't make you selfish, it makes you grounded. Because ultimately your impact doesn't come from reacting to everything. It comes from what you build. It comes from how you lead. It comes from the stability, the perspective, the space that you create for your people and the people around you. The world is always going to be worlding. The question is, are you reacting to it or are you leading through it? Are you constantly commenting on what is going on because you feel that you have to? Or are you creating spaces and creating ripple effects that do good in the world via doing the work that you do best, being the expert that you are? Sometimes we need to step up and talk about the things that are happening right now and show our support for the people that are truly affected by them. And sometimes we need to stay in our lane and do our own thing, and it's absolutely okay to do so. This podcast is a window into the conversations I have every week with the leaders I work with. If you want to be inside that conversation, not just observing it, you will find the Actual Results Club and my one-to-one work linked below.